After the fall of Rome, almost every decorative plant in Europe disappeared along with it. The roads crumbled, the libraries burned, entire systems of knowledge vanished within a generation. But one habit survived the collapse of an entire civilization, and it wasn't preserved in a book, or a temple, or a royal garden. It was hidden inside something far smaller. A single clay pot of dirt. While Rome fell apart, it was monks, quietly working inside monastery walls, who kept potted herbs alive when almost nothing else survived. Not because it was elegant, because a pot could be moved, protected, and controlled, when the ground outside offered no such guarantee. That single idea, control over chaos, is the exact same reason container gardening quietly outperforms almost every herb bed today. Not because pots are trendy, because a bed was never built to solve the problem herbs actually have. Here's what nobody tells you about a herb bed. Herbs are almost the worst possible group of plants to grow side by side in open ground, because they don't agree on anything. One soil, one drainage rate, one watering schedule. Every plant gets identical treatment, whether it suits them or not. So the rosemary sits in rich, damp soil and rots from the roots up. The basil dries out in the one sandy corner left over. The mint escapes and strangles everything within 2 meters. And most people assume they did something wrong. They didn't. The bed did. A single patch of ground cannot give 5 different plants 5 different sets of conditions. But a container, built the right way, can give all of them exactly what they need at the same time in the same footprint. And the method for doing that isn't new either. It's the same principle those monks were quietly relying on centuries before anyone wrote it down as a gardening rule. Here's the split almost nobody is taught. Herbs come in 2 families with completely opposite needs. On one side, the soft leafy ones. Basil, parsley, cilantro, chives. Fast-growing, hungry, and thirsty. On the other, the Mediterranean crew. Rosemary, thyme, oregano, sage. Plants that evolved on dry, rocky hillsides and want to be left a little thirsty. That last part surprises people. Slightly starving a Mediterranean herb makes it taste stronger, because it concentrates its oils instead of pushing out watery growth. Water it like basil, and it goes soft and flavorless. Put both families in one bed, and one of them always loses. Put them in one pot, built the right way, and you can serve both at once. Take one large container, at least 5 gallons. Mound the soil higher on one side so water naturally drains toward a low corner. In that damp corner go the thirsty ones, basil, parsley, chives. On the high dry side, mix in a heavy handful of grit and plant the Mediterranean herbs there instead. One pot, a small wet valley and a dry sunny hill sitting 8 inches apart. 5 or 6 herbs, each in their ideal conditions, and a footprint the size of a dinner plate. No bed in the world can do that. Which fixes the second thing quietly eating most of your time: watering. In a bed, watering is a blunt instrument. You soak everything because you can't water one plant without watering its neighbor. In a container built with wet and dry zones on purpose, one pass of the can serves both. The low corner holds it, the high side sheds it. There's one size rule beginners get wrong constantly. Small pots swing from soaked to bone dry in a single afternoon, and that stress kills more herbs than any pest ever will. A large container behaves like a reservoir. It forgives you for forgetting a day. There's a third advantage hiding in plain sight. A container is a fortress for reasons most people never credit it for. The first is height. Slugs and snails destroy soft herbs, and basil is close to their favorite food on earth. Lift the pot onto a bench and it becomes far harder to reach. Same for rabbits, which graze a parsley patch to the ground overnight and never touch a raised container. The second is disease. Root rots and fungal spores build up in a bed year after year, and once they're in your soil, they stay there. In a container, you tip the mix out and start clean. A fresh slate every season, which no bed gardener can buy at any price. And the third is pure herb territory. Mint. Plant it in a bed and you haven't planted a herb, you've started an invasion. It runs underground, surfaces everywhere, and people spend years trying to remove it. In a pot, it's just a plant. Well behaved, exactly where you left it. Want mint in the main pot anyway? Sink a smaller pot inside the big one and plant it in there so the roots stay trapped. You get the herb without the takeover. But soil and water were never the biggest reason this method survived a monastery when almost nothing else did. The real advantage is something no bed, however well built, has ever been able to do. You can pick it up and move it. A bed is a decision you make once and live with. Wrong sun, wrong spot, and your only options are to suffer or start again with a shovel. A pot is a decision you can change on a Tuesday afternoon. And with herbs, that matters more than people think. Sun in a small space shifts hugely across a season. A corner perfect in May can be shaded by July. In a pot, you move it. In a bed, you just watch the basil stretch and go pale. You can dodge weather too. Hail, a heat wave, a late frost that would flatten basil overnight. Carry the pot under cover for 2 days and carry on. There's a smaller mobility trick that quietly changes your cooking. Put the pot by the kitchen door, not down at the far end of the garden. By the door. Herbs you have to walk 50 feet for are herbs you stop reaching for. The whole point was always reaching for them mid-recipe, without thinking twice about it. And this is the one that mattered most to those monks centuries ago. Basil dies at first frost, always. But rosemary, bay, and potted thyme will come indoors, sit on a bright windowsill, feed you through winter and go back outside in spring. In cold ground, those are plants you replace every year. In a pot, they're plants you keep, and they only get better with age, exactly the way a monastery herb garden could survive winters that killed everything planted directly in the soil outside its walls. In fairness, a pot does have one real weakness. It has no backup. In open ground, roots travel to find water and food. In a container, what you put in there is that plant's entire universe, so pots dry faster and run low on food sooner. The fix is simple. Go larger than feels reasonable. Mulch the surface with grit or bark, and feed lightly but regularly. Do that, and the weakness mostly disappears. One last rule separates a pot that quits in July from one that produces until frost. Keep cutting and kill the flowers the moment they appear. To a herb, that reads as a signal to abandon seed and push fresh growth instead. And harvest the same way every time. Outside in. Take the older outer leaves first and leave the small growing center alone. Strip a plant from the middle and you cut off its ability to keep branching. Harvest from the outside and the plant reads it as room to expand, not damage to recover from. Do that consistently and one basil plant stops being something you pick from once or twice. It branches into a small, dense bush that keeps feeding you. The same pot, the same plant, for months instead of weeks. It's a small habit. But it's the difference between a pot that gives up in July and one that quietly keeps producing until the first frost finally takes it. So the same trick that kept herbs alive inside monastery walls while an empire collapsed outside them is still sitting in a single pot on a windowsill today. Not because pots are fashionable, because control has always mattered more than space. So tell me, which herb has died on you the most? Be honest, I'd bet it was drowning, not starving. And if you built this pot today, what goes in the wet corner and what goes on the dry side? Drop your combination in the comments.